ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive. Brought to you by Huntington Federal Savings Bank. Local then, local now. Member FDIC.
It is Wednesday, May 6th. Your Drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. You can join the program by calling the Miller Lite phone lines at 877-420-TALK. That is 877-420-8255. Miller Lite, hold true, great taste. Only 96 calories. It is the original light beer. Coming up on the program, Tim Stevens from the Herald-Dispatch. We're going to talk a little athletics with him. We get his thoughts on some recruiting going on for the Thundering Herd. So he's coming on the program here in about the next 10 minutes or so. Looking forward to that. And, of course, we'll take your phone calls and your tweets on social media. You can find me on Twitter at Paul Swann. Come on, let's get that ramped up. We're going to have sports here again in some fashion sooner than later. Let us go ahead and just start getting used to that now. I'm pretty sure we're going to have something. Baseball's talking about coming back. There's some talk maybe we could see July. You've got soccer getting back in Germany to a degree. You've got Korean baseball. There's going to be something. We don't know what the NHL is going to look like. We don't know what the NBA is going to look like. The NFL, they're going to release their schedule tomorrow. We're going to look forward to that. There's going to be one of those prime time things. I don't know why they're doing it prime time. Just go ahead and give it to us tomorrow so I can talk about it tomorrow. We got to wait till Friday to get into it, but I'll be looking at the Bengals schedule for sure. We know the opponents. We just don't know the dates. And again, it's going to be different this year because you're not going to have the international games, and there's going to have to be some flexibility here just in case you can't get started back. But as we've talked about before, you can start, if you're the NFL, a little bit sooner than, say, college football because you have a unified voice. And there's been talk, there's been that narrative that's been happening that possibly conferences are on the same page, or at least the power conferences. Really, you're going to have everybody on the same page because there is not one size fits all for this right now. Each conference is going to do what is in the best interest of that conference, to be fair. If it benefits the SEC, it's going to happen for the SEC the way they want it to happen. The ACC will have their own way of doing things. Conference USA, for the most part, they're going to have to do what they need to do. Non-conference games could be a problem. They could happen. We don't know. Everything is still fluid, but I think we're going to get this thing back in some form. I just don't know what that's going to look like. I don't think you're going to see a complete icing out of sports. NASCAR is going to get back sooner than later, so that's going to be interesting to follow that, and we're going to talk more about that next week as we get closer and closer to the engines revving up again. I will say this, though, for NASCAR, they've handled it pretty well. They've been really innovative. Again, the iRacing was really cool. I like that. They've done that a lot better than some of the other leagues. NHL, they've done some things. I mean, Alex Ovechkin and Wayne Gretzky played a game for charity on NHL 20. You saw some of the Madden stuff. You saw some of the 2K stuff. It really wasn't as compelling as the iRacing. iRacing really felt like this was as close as you could possibly get in the current situation to having some sort of simulated sport and still have that competition because you got these guys in their basements or in their rec room and they've got their iRig, they've got their simulator going, and it was really fun to watch. It was really fascinating, to be honest with you. So that's where we're at right now. We've got some things we're going to get into today, and, of course, scheduling will be part of that as well. Grant Traylor talking to a couple of people, including Associate Athletic Director Jeff O'Malley, fact that the schedule could change in Conference USA with basketball. That's something we've touched on before. What's the current situation going to be? The pod play, not happening. Bonus play, whatever you want to call that, getting away from that. Now you just got to figure out if it's going to be an 18-game schedule for conference play. Is it going to be 16? Is it going to be 14? What's it going to look like? So some good stuff from Grant Traylor. And, of course, Tim Stevens. We'll have him on here in the program here in the next few minutes, and we're going to talk to him. He's got some good stuff as well. And Tim, of course, is always a welcome guest on the program. So I'm looking forward to talking to him. And I'm looking forward to taking your calls and taking your comments as well. Best place to catch me today, though, is on Twitter at Paul Swann. So we're looking forward to reading all your tweets on the air as we continue this exile from sports. It's tough. Not just the exile from sports, but the exile from everything. I mean, we're starting to see things open back up on a gradual basis. Do you have that? You have that quarantine hair? Do you have that quarantine hair? Because I'm going to be quite honest with you, I've got the quarantine hair. And so that's going to be my first goal. Once I feel it's good for me, I've got to find someone to go take care of the quarantine hair. I mean, look, rumor has it, there's a black market for these type of things here, at least in our building. I'm not going to name names, but there's a black market for things like this, for personal hair care. I have not encountered that black market, but I've heard about it, and I've seen a couple of people with the results of this black market, this underground hair care. That might be the next thing we might have to support. Salons, barbershops, they're opening back up on a gradual basis here, and of course, support those folks. Be safe. Support those folks, though. But at the same time, I've been impressed with everyone's efforts so far, understanding that opening back up doesn't mean you go back to the way things used to be. And I've seen different ways that this has been handled, the care going into this. I was even reading a story, and this is completely off base compared to what we're talking about, but it ties in. I was reading a story about a hockey rink in Florida, a privately owned rink, and they're opening back up. Now, they've limited what they're doing, and what it is that's really fascinating about what they decided to do, because they've seen some rinks that have just had to shut down, and they've been really cool about paying their employees. They didn't pay the last couple of weeks because, well, they had to pay the rent. And the overhead on a privately owned rink is pretty crazy from what I was reading, at least in Florida. But they're doing things like you got to come in and have pretty much almost all your gear on. You got to show up and you got to be ready to go with your gear. And you get on the ice 15 minutes before you play, and then you get out of there. After you're done, you got a few minutes and you're done. Dressing rooms are going to be disinfected before, during, and after with disinfectant spray. And they're going to do some other things, and they're going to do everything they possibly can to keep up the hygiene, keep up the sanitary nature of this, and try to mitigate every possible way you could possibly come in contact with the virus. They're going to do everything they possibly can. They're going to have electronic whistles. I was reading, of course, officials are going to be masked. You're going to have to be masked. All it is to it. It's going to be interesting. This might be a kind of a curiosity for me, slightly a model. What will the NHL do? How will the NHL handle this? Yeah, NBA, we're going to see what this comes up with and what they come up with. That's going to be interesting as well, because I'm sure the leagues are talking to each other, especially if you have a shared building. And I don't know what the building situation is going to be just yet, because we haven't got that guidance yet. But the NFL, they can't go anywhere else. They're going to play in their home stadiums. There's no neutral location. I don't see the NFL going to, okay, we're all going to play games in one location. No. It's going to be a game scheduled in Cincinnati, played in Cincinnati. And they might look at the schedule and try to maybe figure out, all right, how do we make this schedule work from a geographic standpoint? Is it going to be we're going to play maybe more of the easier travel games first? How are we going to schedule this? How are we going to put this together? I'm sure there's some thought put into that. But that's on the other side of the show. Second half, we'll get into all of that. When we come back from break, Tim Stevens from the Herald-Dispatch joins us. Of course, Tim becoming a recurring regular guest, and he'll be my guest when we continue with today's edition of The Drive here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Now, back to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
We're presented by Huntington Federal Savings Bank. Welcome back to today's edition of The Drive here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm Paul Swann, your host for this hourly visit into the world of sports. And joining me on the program now, I always look forward to my visits with him. He's been covering the Thundering Herd for, well, Longer than any of you can count, and that's Tim Stevens, and he's with us now on the program. What we put you at, like 30 years, 40 years? I mean, you're only 42, so how many years did we put you at?
My trial started when I was 2.
You started when you were 2?
Yeah, and when I was 2, so that puts it in almost 40. Yeah, that's right. So
40 years.
Oh, I've been at it 38, almost 39 years now.
40 years, man. 40 years. I was like, what was I, 10 when you started? I'm 48. I was like 10?
I got to hang with you more often, buddy. I'll tell you what. I do.
I'm good for your ego, aren't I?
Yeah, you're good for my ego here. I like that. I was a freshman in college when I started at the Herald-Dispatch, and before that, any sport I didn't play in high school, I covered for Jimmy Walker of the Ironton Tribune, and he paid me a whopping $5 a story. So.
That's pretty good. That's big money back then.
Hey, I'm up to $750 now, so we're in big bucks.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, you're $750. That's even better. Hey, look, you got to admit though, I'm better for your ego than Grant Traylor, right?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, Grant, he's something else now. I got to hang with you more often.
I appreciate that. You can come on anytime. You can bring Grant too. Boy, he's been hustling all over the place. So just hats off to you, him, the columnist. I mean, you guys have been hustling all over the place. You might not think you're hustling. You might think that this is just day to day for us. What are you talking about? But you guys have been all over the place.
Well, thank you for noticing. I appreciate that. We've been digging up stories that might not have, either been in the paper or they certainly wouldn't have been on page one. And now we find, hey, some of these are page one worthy, and it's a lot of fun to write about all the various things that we're coming up with. It's funny, even without games, we still have plenty of stories to do. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. I mean, I'm not going to complain about being a sports writer. That's our job is pretty cool.
You got another story to talk about today, and we can't bring Megan Smith on to talk about her just yet. So, Tim, you're the best thing next to the coach herself to talk about a new player joining the softball team. Now, I was going to hazard this pronunciation before I talk to you, and I'm still going to hazard it a little bit, but I'm going with Camryn, and then you help me with the last name. I was saying Michallas, but you're saying Michallas.
Michallas.
That's right. Okay, Michallas.
Yes, let's see. Camryn Michallas. That's right. Played at Huntington High. Really good player. This is a nice get for Marshall. It definitely is. She signed with Akron out of Huntington High. Played a season there. Transferred to Gulf Coast State College, a JUCO in Panama City, Florida. Was having a really good season this spring before everything was shut down. She decided, out of JUCO, she was recruited by several schools and decided she wanted to come back home where friends and family could see her play at Marshall. So it's a really good get for Marshall. They recruited her out of high school too, and she wanted to get away then, but now she decided she'd like to get back to her roots here in Huntington.
Did it help that Marshall softball is as good as Marshall softball is? I mean, you're not coming to a program that needs necessarily help. It's not a rebuild. It's not a program that's sort of middling. This is a competitive program on a yearly basis. So did it help her knowing that, okay, I can come back home and I can still play competitive softball?
No, definitely so. You're not coming back to a program that's going to go 12-40 in a season or something like that. Come back and play for a team that's a regional caliber softball team, a conference champion caliber team, one of the better power hitting teams in the country. In fact, really a great coach that they have there at Marshall, and Camryn fits in well with this team and its style too. Now, where Shonda Stanton was a great coach, had huge success. Her teams are more speed based usually. This team that Marshall has now is more of a clouter and out power hitting kind of team, and Camryn fits in with that. She has really good pop, and she's probably not going to hit 20 home runs, but she can. She has good pop and a good bat as well, so she'll hit for power and average. She'll fit in really well on this team from an offensive standpoint, and then defensively, she is quite quite good at third base and at shortstop, and she can play second. She can even pitch a little bit. So if you need somebody to eat some innings at some point, she can go on the mound and not hurt you. But she's more of a position player and a good big bat. So I think she could definitely help this team.
Yeah, that's a good point. You look at what Marshall softball is now, and it's just knock that ball far as you can. And yes, there's still speed and there's still everything else that goes into it, but it's a lot of fun when you're just watching the ball go over the fence sometimes.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It is. There's nothing wrong with speed, and you've got to have your slap hitters and folks who can run ahead of those big heavy hitters too. But boy, it's just a boatload of fun to see these girls knock it over, these women knock it over the fence. They have players hitting it off the ACF building. That's a shot. That's a long way to hit a softball. And Cam will fit right in with those folks. She can hit it out of the park. She had 12 home runs in 3 seasons at Huntington High, and how high school schedules are around here. They're abbreviated because of the spring rains and all that kind of stuff. So she hit 12 there. She had 1 so far this year down at Buff Coast, and she was batting .329. So it's a good solid batting average for college players. She can definitely help them offensively and defensively.
She's got a history with Marshall, though. She's not just coming into this, hey, this is the school that was in my hometown, I think I should go there. There's a lot of ways that she's tied into Marshall athletics already.
All right. Her sister played softball there around 2009, 2010, that range. And her dad played soccer. Her dad is Rod Michallas, who played soccer at Marshall back in the 80s. So yeah, she has a definite history with Marshall, and she's always loved the Herd. She signed with Akron originally just to kind of get away, like kids often do. But she's always been a Marshall fan, and she'll look good in green and white. And their family gets to come see her play, and her family history with Marshall just makes it that much better.
When talking to her, is there anything you learned that maybe didn't make your story in the Herald-Dispatch, which I encourage everyone to go read, by the way? I don't want to just steal Tim's story and repeat it verbatim here, but was there anything when you were talking to her that maybe you wish you could have got into the story?
Oh, there's always, quirky little things about kids. I always ask, players, is there anything unusual about you? And 9 times out of 10, you don't get anything, but every now and then you do. With Camryn, it was kind of her. We talked deeper about her love for Marshall and that kind of thing. She lives 3 minutes from the campus, that kind of thing. And you didn't realize how big a Marshall fan she was until actually talking to her, especially since she'd signed somewhere else out of high school. But she, like most people in Huntington, has a real love for the Herd and a chance to. People from around here who sign with Marshall always say, you get a chance to play for the 75. Referring to the people who died in the plane crash. And even if it's not football, when you sign with Marshall, you're playing for the 75. That's kind of the attitude. And Cam has that attitude as well. It's heartwarming to see. She's a good kid, and I think the fans will like her.
She was pretty surprised when Coach Megan Smith even reached out to her and made her an offer, because she was under the impression that they weren't looking at her, and that really probably made her day to find out that Marshall was interested.
Oh, it really did. Yeah, it definitely did. She was looking at some other places. Towson State was really heavy on her, and then some other schools. And when Marshall comes calling, your hometown school that's as successful as Marshall with women's softball comes calling, that gets your attention. That makes you feel good. And I know that made Camryn feel good. To be wanted by a program of that caliber, that was big for her. That's a big ego boost right there. And she had some big offers coming out of high school, Virginia Tech and Michigan, several other schools where a lot of MAC schools are really interested in her. So, the recruiting game's nothing new to her, but Marshall reached out as much as they did this time and was genuinely interested. Really, that really touched her. She was very pleased about that.
Tim Stevens is with us from the Herald-Dispatch, and his story about a local softball prodigy making the trip back home to Huntington. And, of course, you can read more about that in the Herald-Dispatch, but I don't want to take away totally from your story there. But do you see softball continuing to really be a feeder for Marshall locally. Softball seems to be one of the better sports in the Mountain State. I mean, we talk about maybe there's a lack of D1 athletes when it comes to football in the state, but really when you look at softball and the other sports, you're not too far from having a bumper crop almost of D1 athletes.
No, you really are. You can field, maybe not your entire roster, but a good portion of it just with the four big schools, the four AAA schools nearest Marshall, Huntington High, Cabell Midland, Spring Valley, and Hurricane, all have terrific softball programs and produce just a whole bunch of players. And all of those, Marshall has players from all of those schools, and you spread that out a little bit to other parts of the state where you can get some players and you're in business. And it's not bad over in southeastern Ohio and northeast Kentucky either. You can get some real softball talent here locally. That sport has grown tremendously so in the last 20 years, I would say. And that bodes well for Marshall's recruiting.
Tim Stevens with us from the Herald-Dispatch. Okay, so where's the next pearl coming from? What's the story you got squirreled away? Come on, just break some news for me, Tim.
Oh, my goodness. Let's see. We've got another top 50 coming up in the morning, and well, I'm not supposed to give it away. There was a certain, I could say screwball kicker, but that covers all of them. So, but this one focuses on a certain kicker breaking a certain losing streak for Marshall in the 1980s. How does that sound?
That's pretty cool. I'll go with that. That's pretty cool right there. How fun has that?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, how fun has that been to write those? You, Grant, and I'm sure the columnist has had his input as well.
Oh gosh, it's so enjoyable. And that's the thing. We try to run the game story, the original game stories, and those are fun to go back and read, or if it's a recap of a game story, those are fun. But the column and the sidebar is what's really fun, to give some inside perspective that maybe you couldn't give at the time. Like in tomorrow's, we'll touch on this kicker's relationship with his coach, because they were both the coaches syndrome. So they were both kind of volatile personalities, big personalities. And I get into that a little bit in tomorrow's column, but that's just been so much fun to go back and tell some of the Randy Moss things from practice that wouldn't have made a daily story maybe back then. And some of the things that'll be coming up with Chad Pennington and Byron and Danny Derricott's another one that's coming up soon, and just a lot of those stories that your average fan or that most fans didn't really know about. And it's fun and it's exciting to get to tell those stories now.
What's the roundtable like? I'm sure you just didn't wake up one day and say, here are the 50 best moments. What was the discussion like and trying to plot this out and put it together? Were there a lot of, yeah, you're right? Is there some more meat to that? Maybe you and Landon fighting over a certain placement of a I mean, you guys tell me. I mean, I would have liked to have been in the room when you guys were hashing that out.
It was kind of fun, and it was more Grant and I than anybody, but we involved Chuck, and hey, what do you think of this? We involved Dave Walsh because Dave covered Marshall in the 80s, before I did, and that kind of stuff. We got him in the mix, and we even talked to Rick Nolte, who, he was former Marshall beat writer and former sports editor of the Herald-Dispatch. He's in Georgia now, and we talked to Rick McCann. Hey, what do you think about it? Should we do this one or this one, and that kind of stuff, and kind of put it together that way, and it came down eventually to, okay, Grant, you pick 25, and then I'll pick 25, and we'll merge them together, and we'll cut some of this, and we'll add some of that, and number one was easy. It won't be real hard. I won't give it away, but it won't be real hard to guess what the most significant win in Marshall history was. But from 2 through 49, 2 through 50 was fun jockeying around putting those together, and that's kind of the surprising thing is not all of the moments were wins. Not all the top 50 moments were victories. But that's like like tomorrow's is a tie. But it was a significant moment in history, and with me having been there, Grant wasn't at that game, so I know a little bit more about that. But he may have been, he was a beat writer after I was, and he saw some games that I might not have seen. So it came together really well. There wasn't really any really big disputes or anything, or any wide margins where I thought something was 35 and he thought it was 17 or something. We were pretty like-minded for the most part on it.
Okay, you're talking about the number one game is a slam dunk. I don't know if 2 and 3 are okay. 2 and 3 might be slam dunks, or there might be some battling for jockeying a position here. Just in my mind, that's why I'm now piqued more, finding out what it is, because I'm thinking there's a game in '87 that should be in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
There's a game in '92 that should be in the top 5.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. There's a game in '71 that is in the top 5.
It most definitely is in the top, emphasizing the word top 5, yes.
And there's another game in '71 that I'm sure Walsh slipped in there because he won it.
That's the first one he was talking about, other than the obvious top one. Yes, that made it too.
So that came in at number 5, right?
It was. It's in the mix. It's in the mix there, at least top 10. But it was, those were. It gets tough when one is kind of obvious, but 2 through 10 is, man, there's some real heavyweight games that this program has played through the years. So it was, it's like rating prospects. When Baseball America puts out top 500 baseball prospects, well, baseball prospect number 26 and baseball prospect number 30 are really pretty much the same, almost interchangeable. And that's how it is with the top 10 with our stories here on Marshall football. 2 through 10, you've got 10's got a real good argument for being higher, and you might have an argument for 2 being a bit lower, or those kinds of things. And it's subjective, but that gets people talking, and it's fun to debate and discuss. It's just a lot of good opportunities to look back and have some good memories and spark some discussion. And that was kind of our goal with this, is give people something to read, to enjoy, and to talk about.
Tim Stevens joining us from the Herald-Dispatch. We've been talking about a lot of things, including Herald-Dispatch's look back at the, significant games in Marshall history. Has there been any pushback? You know how readers are. They all have opinions. Listeners have opinions as well. Have you got that pushback disagreeing with what you guys have laid out so far? And if so, I'm sure you guys have enjoyed that. I know the columnist thrives on that, especially when people disagree with him.
Chuck? No, come on.
No, the columnist. No, it's not Chuck. No. It's either Mr. Landon or the columnist.
No, Chuck gets enough pushback for all of it. But no, we haven't had a lot of that so far. But again, we're only about 15 games in.
Okay.
Where, 35 could easily be 40, and 41 could easily be 36, that kind of stuff. And that's not one. Those games aren't going to start a big argument. Once we get closer to the top 10, I think we'll get some of that. Oh, that should have been a whole lot higher. Or, no, why did you put that game in? I wonder about tomorrow morning's the tie. If we might hear something, why would you put a tie in the paper, especially from people who are in the younger set who don't remember this particular game? That might be a head scratcher for them. But when you really look at this game that's in the paper tomorrow, it was very significant in the history of the program. And the column that I wrote with it, not because I wrote it, but just that it really kind of gets into that and explaining why it was the important game that it was, and shows some of the fun aspects of it. Once you read that, I think people will spark a little bit of debate about whether that game was worthy of being where it is or not. But once we get closer to the top 10, I'm sure we'll get a little bit more dissent. Okay,
and again, we're illustrating this. This isn't a top 10 of just victories. This is defeats as well, and so 66-6 could show up, could be there. It could be anywhere.
66-6 will get mentioned.
Okay.
At least in a story that sets up another story. Let's just say, but yes, 66-6 is a very significant beating that led to a whole heck of a lot of payback in some of these other stories that we'll chronicle. So
Okay, fair enough.
You can definitely bet that's going to be mentioned in more than one story down the stretch.
You know, every time I mention that game, Walsh twitches just a little bit more.
Oh, he hates Miami to this day for that game, as do many, many, many Marshall fans. You know, and Miami earned it. You leave your starters in against a team that's just lost its entire team practically in a plane crash, and you run it up 66-6 on them. The only score Marshall had was on a special teams on a block punt. So that still doesn't sit well to this day. You can ask Dave Walsh, you can ask Woody Woodrum, a lot of these guys who were around then, and that game still sticks in their craw. But coming back and beating Miami and knocking them out of the Peach Bowl, that game might get mentioned somewhere along the way. That was sweet revenge. And then Marshall beating Miami 32-0 down there with under Coach Pruitt. That was many years after 66-6. But every player on that Marshall team was playing for that 66-6 team, for that 71 team that got just ripped unmercifully by Miami. So, that game to this day, motivates Marshall.
As it should. And it motivates me to the point where it's just another reason why I don't like the Pittsburgh Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger. That's another reason.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly. And there are a whole lot of folks who are in that boat. I can relate to that as well. Yeah, when you went to Marshall, and you and I are media, we're impartial, but we also, you hate to see an injustice on anybody, So, gosh, what Miami did to Marshall then was just classless, just unspeakable. That a team would do that. If you win 66-6 and your third stringers are in, okay, that's football. When you leave your starters in and you pound a young team like that unmercifully after they had just gone through that plane crash, there's no justification for that. So every payback that Marshall has ever delivered to Miami was quite justified.
Tim Stevens, my guest from the Herald-Dispatch. Good catching up with you again. We need to do this more often. Maybe you can just come in once a couple of weeks, just whatever you want to talk about. I mean, you can bring Grant, bring Chuck, bring the whole crew. We'll do it by phone, but bring them. Go ahead. It'd be fun.
Hey, I'd love it. I always thoroughly enjoy it, and be happy to be on talking with you. It's always a pleasure. You and I've been buddies for a long time, and it's an honor to be on the air.
No, I appreciate it, sir. The honor's mine. I thank you for coming in. We'll do it again soon.
Sounds good, buddy. Thank you a lot.
Tim Stevens joining us from the Herald-Dispatch. Good catching up with him. We'll have more on the way. It's The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Welcome back to the May 6th edition, The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. And one of the things that we're doing here at Kindred Communications, and really it's been pretty spectacular so far because of this epidemic that we're all going through right now. We talk about it every day. The loss of sports. This isn't necessarily a sports thing what we're doing, though, but we talk about it on a daily basis. There are a lot of kids, a lot of seniors, they lost a lot. Now, you might think in the grand scheme of things, okay, they lost a few months of their life, and they're going to go through some adversity as student athletes, and that's what it's all about. And I get all of that, but at the same time, you still have to acknowledge it pretty much sucks. Kids lost their whole senior experience, and so we think we're going to do something that's going to be really special for them. Just a little bit to maybe help them, and that's our shout-outs that we're doing. So if you are a parent or guardian of a high school senior anywhere, and I mean anywhere in our listening area, you can submit an audio recording with you and your family sending a senior a shout-out, a special message. So your senior, don't go randomly sending somebody, here's the deal. Your senior, make it personal, but it's your senior. So all you have to do is go to our website, wrvc.com. That's where you get all the details, and then you can upload your own shout-out. So I encourage you to do that. It's going to be pretty cool. I've already got sort of a preview of some of them. It's pretty cool. We want to add your voice to what we have already. So go to our website, wrvc.com. That's where you can find out more information about our senior shout-outs. And I tell you what, these kids years from now, they're going to look back on this and they're going to have hopefully some good memories. Not just the bad memories of maybe not getting to graduate with your class or having your senior night or finishing out your season. You can look at those memories and understand, yeah, that's part of it. But hopefully these kids are going to have some good memories knowing that it's more than just those things. They've gained something here with everything that's been going on. And really, you got to understand, it's pretty tough. And this is something that we've never gone through before in our generation. For the most part, we've never had a pandemic like this, and we've never gone through it like this. And these kids, keep them in mind. Go to WRVC.com for our senior class shout-out. Okay, we went a little long with Tim, but that's okay. We're going to come back and wrap it up here when we continue with today's edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Don't worry. Paul Swann has the wheel on The Drive, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
We're wrapping up today's edition of The Drive here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. Thanks for tuning in. It's good catching up with Tim Stevens from the Herald-Dispatch. Hopefully we can do that again here in a couple of weeks. Go check his story out. Also, Grant Traylor, we were going to talk a little bit about his story today in the program, but not much time. But it's something that we've been all talking about here for several weeks. Bonus play, not going to be a thing in Conference USA, and we'll find out soon. Nothing's final, but you could see the basketball schedule. You could see it maybe an 18-game slate for conference play. You could see 14 games. Maybe you could see 16. 18 might be the sweet spot when it comes to playing. And really, travel is going to be the consideration as far as trying to figure out how to make this all work. Travel really eats into the budget of Conference USA schools. What do you think schools at maybe a Division II level can have more athletic programs? Because they're kind of focused more on geography. Now, it's going to be a little difficult to do that at the Division I level, especially in a Conference USA, a Sun Belt. You've got to really, the Mid-American Conference, they probably, of the group of 5 schools, probably for the most part have the better footprint when it comes to funding their athletics with the travel. It's a bus league for a lot of it, and sure, you like to have a little bit more depth and width to your conference, and I get that. But at the same time, the travel is going to be an issue, and I think the bonus play, while I acknowledge Conference USA was thinking out of the box, didn't work out, wasn't a fan of it after the first year, and I understand you want to give it the old college try and go at it again, and wasn't a fan of it the second time. Getting away from it, the pod play, just play your schedule. Line it up, 14 teams, 16 teams, 18 games, line it up, go that route. I think you'll see a lot more when it comes to, just equity. But you got to figure out the travel. And you don't have a magic wand to just wave over the travel issue. And, maybe you cluster those games a little bit further apart, or maybe you try to avoid those long trips. You just look at the schedule from that standpoint. Okay, the schools that are furthest apart, maybe you kind of rotate those. You rotate them in. Easy for me to say. You rotate those schools in and try to come up with some scheduling formula that is fair and really helps the budget. It's all going to be figured out. We get the spring meetings coming up in the league later on this year. We will have the kickoff. It'll be virtual. Everything is going to fall into place, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more direction and understanding of what Conference USA is going to do here in the meantime. So, Back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. Hopefully we can be just another part of your day for an hour. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I want to thank Tim Stevens for joining me, for talking a little bit more about what was going on, not just with his story about Marshall softball, but Marshall football as well. Back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. Until tomorrow, have a great night, everyone.